Well, Germany says it has deported dozens of Afghans convicted of crimes to their home country, the first time under Chancellor Friedrich Merz's new government. The deportations came as Germany hosted a summit with EU partners focusing on migration. Germany's Interior Minister Alexander Dobrindt said that Germany wanted to take a leading role in the EU's migration policy.
Leipzig-Halle Airport on Friday morning. The identities of the people in this image have been blurred, but the German Interior Ministry confirmed 81 Afghan nationals were on board the plane after failed asylum claims and criminal convictions. It was the first such flight conducted since Germany's government took office earlier this year. Several hours later, on Germany's highest mountain, the Zugspitze, the German Interior Minister hosted a summit with some of Germany's EU neighbours to discuss tougher migration policies, like dealing with rejected asylum seekers. The Interior Minister addressed the deportations to Afghanistan, which were arranged even though Germany has no formal diplomatic relations with the Taliban.
We have done this with strategic partners. Qatar has supported us in this as a strategic partner. However, I would also like to make it clear that we must be able to carry out such deportations in the future without strategic partners, including to Afghanistan and to Syria.
Last year, under the previous government, Germany resumed deportations of Afghan nationals despite critics highlighting human rights violations being recorded there. With the rise of the far-right AfD, current Chancellor Friedrich Merz and his government have taken a tough line on migration.
We are all concerned that the excessive demands placed on our countries by illegal migration are also contributing massively to the polarization of society. We want to push back this polarization.
France's Interior Minister also called for a tougher stance.
We want to be firmer against illegal immigration, and we want to drastically reduce illegal immigration.
Germany and its 5 European counterparts agreed on several goals to tighten asylum rules in the EU, but that would need approval from other member states.
Gerald Knaus is a migration analyst and director of the European Stability Initiative. That's a think tank here in Berlin. Welcome back to DW, Gerald. Germany today resumed its deportations to Afghanistan, and that was despite criticism from human rights organisations and opposition politicians. So why are these German deportations to Afghanistan so controversial?
It's an interesting question because those that are sent to Afghanistan are people who have been denied protection by the German Asylum Agency and by the courts, because you can always appeal to the courts. And in addition, Germany focuses on those who've been convicted of crimes. Now, I don't know the crime history of each of these people, but we already had one deportation of people last year from Germany. And then two people who had been convicted of crimes were sent to Afghanistan. And this is not a violation of any EU law. This is not a violation of the Refugee Convention. The real difficulty has been the diplomacy required, because Germany has not until now been negotiating or recognizing the Taliban regime. So the political issue has not been whether you can send these people to Afghanistan, you can, but whether you should talk on this with a regime that, of course, is viciously persecuting women in Afghanistan, and that has serious problems with its general human rights record.
So how does that work then? If Germany is one of the EU countries that is not dealing directly with the Taliban government, how do you arrange deportations to a country whose government you don't recognise?
Honestly, I don't know how it was done in this case. Last time it was done through a mediation. Qatar was helping. I mean, there is a strong case to be made that Germany, like other countries, might try to reach out to what is in the end now the effective government of Afghanistan. This doesn't require recognizing their political agenda. I mean, we have diplomatic relations with Russia, which is pursuing a vicious war of aggression against Ukraine, and is threatening the European Union. But still, we have embassies there. So to have diplomatic relations, to talk to a country, is not really legitimizing their domestic agenda.
Right.
But it would be a step further than the previous German government was willing to take.
Let's talk about today's meeting between Germany's interior minister and counterparts from some of the country's neighbours. They've agreed to tighten asylum rules and to facilitate deportations. Again, human rights organisations claim that some of the proposals from this meeting don't conform with EU or with international law. So are we looking at EU asylum laws perhaps changing in the future to accommodate these proposals?
Yes. I mean, one of the things that is being discussed is a change that the European Commission in Brussels has put on the table in May. It has long had strong support across the EU from many member states, but the previous German government was opposed to the idea of processing asylum claims in safe third countries. So the idea would be that you can take people to another safe third country to discourage irregular arrivals. This country needs to meet human rights conditions, otherwise courts will block the transfer, as we've seen in Britain in the case of Rwanda. But if a country meets the human rights conditions, until now you also needed to have a connection between the person you transfer there and the country. And this so-called connectivity criteria, this connection criteria, is now going to be removed from EU law. So that makes it possible to have such arrangements, and all the ministers of interior gathering now in Germany would like to see this happening.
A quick word about something you wrote, saying that the German government now has the opportunity to make what you called a humanitarian migration shift. What did you mean by that?
Well, we are seeing what Donald Trump is doing in the US. He's sharply reduced irregular migration through methods that are making a mockery of all the human rights conventions, the Refugee Convention, even the US legal system. Taking people to a torture prison in El Salvador. But it has, of course, intimidated and frightened people, and so irregular migration numbers have fallen. Europe needs to show that the demand of the majority of Europeans in Germany and elsewhere, that you can reduce irregular migration, can be met without violating the human rights, the refugee, the children's rights, or the torture convention, without violating human rights. And this government, with safe third country agreements with third countries, if these legal changes are passed, can actually do that. And that would be a real shift in policy.
Thanks so much for talking us through that, Gerald. Gerald Knaus from the European Stability Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, DW correspondent Michael Watzke is covering that summit for us. He joins us from the Zugspitze. Michael, I understand the Interior Ministers' meeting has concluded. What came out of it?
Well, it's a lot about symbolism here on Zugspitze Mountain in 3,000 meters height. Those interior ministers, 6 of them, Germany and its neighboring countries. So part of it were Denmark, Czech Republic, Poland, Austria, France and Germany. They have concluded to pursue 5 aims that they called the Zugspitze targets. And those are sharpening European migration and asylum laws, fighting against human trafficking and smuggling, accelerating deportations, strengthening border security at the outer EU boundaries, and enabling asylum procedures in third countries. So that is what those 6 interior ministers have agreed upon. If they can actually aim, if they can actually make those aims come true is another question. And I talked about symbolism. You see, this is a day of fog here on Zugspitze, and those interior ministers in the next weeks and months have to cut through heavy fog, especially judicial fog, to actually be able to get to those aims that they have agreed upon here on Zugspitze.
Michael, I'm afraid we've got some sound problems there with the wind up there on the Zugspitze. It looks like a tough weather conditions. Michael Watzke at the Zugspitze in Germany, thank you very much.